Si se están conectando desde una computadora, van a ver el icono de un globo que está ubicado en la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom. Hacen clic en el globo y seleccionan español y pueden silenciar el audio original. Si están utilizando un dispositivo móvil o se están conectando desde una tableta, toquen su pantalla, seleccionan los 3 puntos, interpretación de idiomas, seleccionan español y silenciar el audio original, y para finalizar, seleccionan finalizado, terminado o listo. For those who are monolingual English speakers, we have interpretation available for you today. So if you're using a computer, you can see at the bottom of the Zoom menu a world icon. You can select it and then select English. And if you are joining from a tablet or phone, you can tap your screen, select the 3 dots, language interpretation, and select English, and then finish are done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone is having trouble with interpretation, please feel free to let us know either right now or at any point throughout the meeting. So we will just continue to move on with our housekeeping items. So here you are seeing our normal renaming conventions, which is important for our attendance tracking and stipend distribution process. So if you are a CSC member, as usual, please put CSC in front of your first and last name. And if you are a resident, feel free to put an R. If you are a member of the public, we ask that you put a P next to your name. And if you are coming from a specific organization, please put that in your Zoom name as well. And you may notice throughout the night that we are changing names, and we typically do that, again, just to help with our attendance tracking. So here we have our usual virtual meeting etiquette. We ask that folks stay on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. If you are calling in on the phone, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. We also ask that if you would like to speak, that you raise your Zoom hand so that we can call on you when it is appropriate. If you are on a phone, you can press *9 to raise your Zoom hand. And for residents who are a part of our stipend program, you have to stay for 75% of our meeting as usual, which is 90 minutes out of our 2 hours together. So here we have our usual group agreements. So everyone has agreed to help achieve our meeting goals by focusing on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue. We want to make sure that we're mindful of creating space for everyone here to participate. We ask for everyone to be kind and respectful, knowing that it's okay to disagree as long as we do it with respect and empathy. In these meetings, we also agree to stay on point and on time. So we ask that you keep your comments brief when possible so that we can have a chance for everybody here to participate. In the case where there's an urgent conversation coming up that might not be a part of the agenda but is taking up a lot of time, we will bring that decision back to the CSC and see how you would like to use the remaining time and whether you would like to table a conversation for later. So that's been our usual practice. So next we agreed to attack the problem and not the person. And then finally, we agreed to seek common ground. Building consensus and finding shared values will help us all achieve the best results. And so our last slide here before we get started is our agenda for tonight. So we'll start with some opening remarks as usual, and then we will review our action items tracker with some updates. Then we will move on to a trees subcommittee update, which will involve an action from everybody. Then the bulk of our meeting will be spent talking about planning for 2023, which we're really excited about. We'll move on to a quick update from the city of Fresno on future updates for land use projects within the community. We'll start wrapping up at 7:20 and then move on to public comment as usual. And I'll stop sharing my screen. So we can move on to opening remarks for tonight. We have Ivanka, who is our co-host for this evening, who will be helping out with facilitation. So I'd love to invite Ivanka and Jessica to get us started with some opening remarks.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Ivanka Saunders. I am Regional Policy Manager with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I am a resident of Southwest Fresno and have been part of the CSC since the very beginning. I would just say that I hope everyone's new year has started off well, and in this space tonight, to the community members, the CSC members, just remember that this is your meeting. If at any time there's something that doesn't make sense or that you do need to stop, reflect a little bit more on, please feel free to do so. And I'll pass it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Ivanka. I'm Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the Air District. I want to first start by thanking Ivanka. This is, I don't even know, her 5th or 6th time, maybe, I don't even know. She's co-hosted a meeting so many times, and it's just, I'm just so grateful for her support and her interest in not just reviewing and setting the agenda, but also talking about how the meeting and how the materials are presented. And so I just want to thank her for all of her efforts. I also just want to quickly introduce you to this, the district folks I have with me today and why. So we have Stephanie Ng on my team, who is your community liaison for the district. We also have Anna Stone. We always have a district person in our Spanish channel recording and helping out with interpretation. And then we have Crystal Yunker, who is a supervisor on our incentives team, because we will be talking about some incentives later in the meeting. So thank you all for allowing us to be here to support you. And I will pass it back to you, Liz.
Awesome. Thank you both. So we will get started and move on to our action item tracker follow-up. So part of our work together, as you all know, is to increase transparency and accountability within the process. So that's why we continue to dedicate time every meeting to review the action item tracker with the committee and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions or any feedback. So as Stephanie provides these updates, feel free to ask for any clarification. Our team will take note of any follow-up questions that are asked, and if they can't be answered tonight, we will make sure to return to your questions at a future meeting. And as another reminder, during the last couple of meetings, we started the practice of taking public comments at the end of every agenda item. And so that is if the comments are related to the specific agenda item. So we ask that if you are a member of the public and you have a general comment that's not related to the item, that you still save that for our final public comment at the end of the meeting. And so with that, I will pass it off to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Liz. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Again, this is just a routine check-in on some of the actions that we've had come out from previous meetings. And so I'm going to go over the most recently updated ones from it's been a minute, but from our November meeting. Can everyone see my screen? Perfect. As some of you might recall, the last meeting we had an air monitoring presentation. So the first few are related to that. One of those is just following up on questions from the presentation regarding some of those, including data from offline monitors. All the feedback that was taken will be incorporated into our next quarterly air monitoring update. There was also a request to add some topics to our future agendas. And so the Air District will add these topics to a list of just future agenda items to discuss during our agenda setting meetings, which will happen a week from now. And our last pending item here, follow up on suggestion to include air monitoring report to workshop for City Council. As the Air District's analysis team gets enhanced speciation results back from the winter air monitoring campaign, we'll have a better understanding of source contributions, and we'll be able to work with the CSC on communicating that information to necessary partners. And those are the ones that we have that are still pending. I'll go ahead and move on to the items that we have completed or still are ongoing. The first is related to just attendance and membership status. We've had this conversation a little bit last meeting, and so we're going to follow up to provide an update on CSC membership and opportunities for resident recruitment during this meeting. This next item was related to a request regarding our indirect source review rule. And so the Air District legal team is continuing to work with our planning and permitting staff to follow litigation that's going on around the South Coast ISR rule. And we'll continue to let the CSC know of opportunities to provide feedback on the San Joaquin Valley's ISR rule. This next question was regarding the truck reroute subcommittee, and just in terms of abilities to provide feedback, and just generally per their outreach plan, the truck reroute subcommittee does provide input on the stakeholders that are involved in that process and their level of engagement. And finally, the Air District will work to bring with the City of Fresno to bring the truck reroute contractors to future CSC meetings just for continual updates to the group. And this next item was regarding following up on construction that's in the downtown area. And so the Air District did follow up on this request, and all of the properties that were in the area did have the right documentation. This is just a reminder, the Air District will continue to monitor the area, but if you have any complaints, there is a number here, and we're happy to provide information also in the chat just about ways that you can file a complaint for Air District inspectors to follow up on any dust complaints. And then finally, this is just an ongoing topic, I think, just standing at all of our quarterly air monitoring updates. If anyone has any feedback, we're happy to take it at any time. You're welcome to email us. If you're interested in co-hosting for that particular meeting, you're welcome to reach out really to any district staff and we can make that happen. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here.
Thank you, Stephanie. Can you drop the web link into the chat in case people want to take time to review that?
Yes, yeah, of course. And then if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to type them into the chat as well for us to respond to. And with that, I'll go ahead and, go ahead. I see Kimberly unmuted. I don't know if you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question in regards to the air monitoring. Have we set a date for the speciation and the black carbon presentation?
I can help answer that. So we are actually conducting speciation on a regular, like every few days basis from now through the winter season. And so we can give a preliminary update if we wanted to schedule the February meeting or March meeting to be our next air monitoring meeting. We might not have all of the speciation done since that whole season is technically through February, but we can start to share at least the early November data as we get it back from the lab. But no, we have not scheduled that, and we're happy to talk about that with you all.
So we're looking at March, mid-March, April to have that presentation, since it'll be collected to the end of February?
Yeah, if we want the full data, certainly we can present earlier. We just won't have the full picture. It would probably be closer to, March, April that we would have the full winter speciation done, since it's a laboratory test that has to get sent out.
All right. I'd like to volunteer to be the co-host for that meeting.
And lower use of oral steroids.
That's awesome. Perfect.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you. Nayamin, I also see your hand up.
Thank you. And I'm sorry you were addressing this. My internet failed, so I had to reconnect. So this is information about the data that was collected this winter season?
Yeah, so okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my question is more about what happened when we brought to your attention the issue of the Edison High School having higher readings, and that you guys did speciation and all that. I don't recall, unless I missed those meetings, what was the update after that?
Yeah.
And if the source was identified, what can we do about it?
Right, great question. I mean, that was our update. That was our November 30th meeting. And I don't know that, were you at our, I don't think you were. Yes. So we went over that in detail at our last meeting, but just to briefly kind of remind everyone, because it's been a minute. We went over all the speciation. We've collected speciation regularly since that discussion with the CSC. Unfortunately, that started right after fireplace season, so we really don't have any good wintertime data. All of the speciation we've collected so far has shown us that there is a good source of OC or organic carbon, which could be wood burning, but we didn't have enough information to make that determination. So one of the updates, we changed laboratories, and something called, I think some of you are very familiar, levoglucosan, which besides it being a long name is just a marker that allows you to especially differentiate between, say, soot from diesel trucks and burning of wood. It doesn't necessarily tell you where the wood burning came from, but it's a little bit more specific. That is what we're doing now this winter, and we're hoping to have a much better picture at Edison. That's where it's all happening for that update that we'll work with Kimberly on.
That answer your question? Okay, great. Are there any other questions or comments about the action items before we move on? Okay. So I think, and of course, oh, I thought I heard something. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we continue with tonight's meeting. But now we will move on to our trees subcommittee update. So folks who have been involved in the trees subcommittee have been working to ensure that there's an equitable process established for developing an RFP, which is a request for proposals for your vegetative barriers and urban greening projects. So for this agenda item, we're really excited to have Lilia share some important updates and next steps for the CSC. So Lilia, please feel free to unmute and get us started.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos al nuevo año. Gracias al Señor ya estamos aquí listos para trabajar. Sí, soy parte de del Comité de Barreras Vegetativas. En las actualizaciones que me están pidiendo nada más es para dejarles saber que en la última reunión que tuvimos de la ecologización urbana, que en general todo el grupo estuvo de acuerdo en seguir dándoles adelante con la aplicación para el programa que son de las Fresno y el grupo de California Environment por Justicia Ambiental, que viene siendo esta Nayamin Martínez. Fuimos parte para que ellas fueran las que adoptaran, los que tuvieran los incentivos para poder seguir trabajando con los pequeños, los árboles de la ciudad de Fresno. Creo que eso es todo lo que tengo para decir ahorita.
Thank you, Lilia. So, Jess, I see you unmuted. Were you going to add something?
Yeah, I'll just let folks know I did drop in the chat. We during that meeting, we had sort of a quick high-level summary of the proposals for urban greening and vegetative barriers. As Lilia just let us know, it was Tree Fresno that applied to both, but each one of them had a partner. And we kind of went into detail with each partner and with Tree Fresno. So for urban greening, it's partnering, as Lilia just said, with Nayamin Martinez and her team at CCEJN. And then for vegetative barriers, which is much more directed and much more, a lot of the idea would be to be along like major roadways or freeways. That partnership is with the city of Fresno, and we talked pretty extensively about that during the subcommittee meeting. So like Lilia said, the subcommittee approved or supported moving forward to you all to get full CSC support on moving forward with these projects so we can start contracting and get projects on the way. But we know there might be folks, if for some reason there were lingering questions or you just wanted to hear kind of high level, we do have some time on the agenda. Tree Fresno is here, Nayamin is here to help answer questions. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Liz, to see if there's any questions from folks or see how we want to proceed.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have time for questions. I see Lisa's hand came up, and before we get to Lisa's question, just want to explain that we will be asking or trying to get consensus tonight to officially get CSE approval to move forward with both of the RFPs for both the vegetative barriers and urban greening CERT measures. And so the way that we will do that is first by asking for any objections to moving forward. And if there are none, then we will take that as CSE approval. If we do have objections, then we will move on to a formal vote with the CSE. But before we try to achieve consensus, I would love to open it up for questions. I'll open it up to, I'll just take a moment to see if anyone on the CSC has a question or comment before we take the member of the public's question. Okay. Lisa, go for it.
Yes, as a member of the public, I would like to know, what did actually Lilia say? Because, you know, I'm on your Zoom and I'm not hearing translation. And I know if she put together a presentation, I would actually like to hear what she said, since I don't understand, I'm not that fluent in Spanish.
Were people able to hear Lilia?
I heard her in Spanish, but I didn't hear the translation.
Like greater than, I'm in the English channel and I was able to hear an English translation. Totally like
Same.
Yeah, so Lisa, it looks like you'll have to select under the interpretation globe, you'll have to select English so that you can hear the translation.
Oh, I thought it was just automatic.
No, we have to select a language so that you can hear whatever. We have simultaneous translation, so when she speaks in Spanish, you would have heard the English.
All righty. Well, sorry, Lilia.
Happy to provide a recap if you have questions.
Well, what did she say?
Yeah, if you would you like to select the English channel so then you can hear Lilia maybe provide a little summary real quick?
I did that.
Okay, so now let's see if we can test this in Spanish. Lilia,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ok, nuevamente. Pues,
1 minute, can you, Lisa, can you hear the translation?
She said yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Lilia.
Yeah.
ok. Ok, pues buenas noches nuevamente a todos y gracias por estar aquí presentes y bienvenidos al nuevo año, como lo dije anteriormente. Sí, estábamos hablando de del subcomité de los árboles, de lo planificado la sesión anterior, esa conversación y apoyar recomendación del subcomité para avanzar con la selección de barreras vegetativas y ecologización urbana. En este caso, como ya lo habíamos dicho la vez pasada, estuvimos todos de acuerdo, el grupo, de seguir trabajando con el grupo de Nayamini de Tree Fresno para que ellos fueran los aportadores para seguir sembrando, plantando los árboles en nuestras comunidades. Entonces, es algo que quisimos seguir adelante con esto y esta es la aplicación que se les dio a ellos, fue para Tree Fresno y para Nayami Martínez es California Environment por Justicia Ambiental, ¿correcto? ¿Está bien? Ok.
That's perfect, very clear and concise, and I greatly appreciate your report. And may others learn from your clear and concise report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Lilia. We do have a couple minutes before our next agenda item, so just want to give it another moment in case there are any questions or comments before we move on to getting CSE approval. Yeah, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, you guys, Mona or Naomi, there were still part of it that will be open to choosing another community or area, correct? For the urban greening portion. And so we'll still need input from CSC. Is that accurate?
No, let me, and Mona, please feel free to chime in, but There are two aspects. I can only talk about the urban greening aspect because that's the one we are the partners. For that one, the model is we're creating events that are called Adopt a Tree. And for that, we are certainly going to reach out. Several of you will reach out before we apply, asking for your support so that we can partner with you, the residents that you organize, so that they can come up with the dates and the locations and everything for those events. So it's very open at this point for urban greening. But I know that vegetative barriers is a separate pot of funding and a separate model, and that I will pass it over to Mona to reply.
Sure, that's a great question. And the great thing about both the urban greening and the vegetative barriers is that there's actually still room for public comment, public like participation in that process. The vegetative barrier that we're beginning with, because we needed to go in with basically almost like a pre-permitted process for a large vegetative barrier in the city of Fresno. And so that's why we partnered with the city of Fresno. So that's the first barrier. And then we have the opportunity to pursue perhaps a second and maybe even a third, depending, on funding availability. We have built these in the past, as I'm sure you're aware. So it's our Tree Fresno actually functions in a way to where the grant, because we're experienced with that, the grant is made available. We've identified some projects, and then we allow room for the development of other projects. So both the vegetative barrier and then urban greening, beyond the homeowner particular project that we're working with CCEJN, we have the opportunity to continue to plant trees that are larger size in residential areas, high needs areas of Fresno. So, and of this particular area of AB 617.
And I think from a process standpoint, I can say that we can use our standing existing framework that the district provides for holding those meetings and support those subcommittee meetings to continue.
Thank you, Mona and Jessica. And just for the action items, just want to clarify this. So if folks want to be part of this conversation and part of the ongoing additional work under this contract for Tree Fresno, they should plan to attend the tree subcommittee.
I think that's a good place to start. And maybe the subcommittee can be a space where we expand together kind of what the other outreach efforts, kind of with the partners at CCEJN and Fresno look like.
Okay, yeah, we'll make note of that. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised or comments in the chat. So I think we can move to, I guess, just asking the CSC if there are any objections to moving forward with both of the RFPs with Tree Fresno and CCEJN. So does anyone object to moving forward? Okay. I think that means we can officially move forward with the two RFPs, which is really exciting. I know how much hard work went into this, and yeah, I think, let's see, oh, thank you. So I think we can wrap up and move to our main agenda item for tonight. So that will be planning for 2023. And I think we will have Jessica walk us through a brief presentation. And most of this agenda item will actually be spent with time for discussion, wanting to get feedback from the CSC about what has worked well for us and how we can improve our processes together. We'll have some specific reflections and questions about membership. So I'm really excited to dive into this discussion with y'all, and I will pass it over to Jessica and Ivanka to lead us through.
Absolutely. And maybe I'll just start, but I'd like to pass it. I don't know, Ivanka, if you want to kick off or you want me to kick off, because it really was, I'll just give so much credit. We had a pretty small, it was around the holidays, a pretty small agenda setting meeting, but it made for a really intimate conversation with a couple of great CSC members, and Ivanka was there and one of them, and really just reflected, I think, not only on the need at the beginning of the year to plan ahead, but also reflect on where we've been. And so you'll see in this presentation a very large, high level look back on where we've been, and then also kind of celebrating some specific milestones. So I'm really looking forward to doing that with you all. And like Liz said, really getting a lot of feedback. Ivanka, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to share before we get started. Okay.
Not really. We can go ahead and get started with the presentation, but I just think as we try to move forward, we have easily gotten into the weeds of the different measures that we've done so far, and we can't lose sight that we're still on this timeline to get a whole lot of other ones finished. So this will give us a chance to really say, okay, we have all these oars in the fire. Now what should we be prioritizing next?
Thank you. Perfect. And so this is, in the past, we have done like very detailed and sort of technical, and I'll start sharing my screen right now. Technical presentations on like funding and where we are, and we want to keep doing those types of presentations. But today's presentation is a little bit more high level because it's sort of our kickoff to the year, and kind of a time to reflect, I don't think in a way that we ever have before. And so I'll just start off by saying I think we need to sometimes take time, and really to credit to all of you, to talk about the progress we've made, and really the progress that we've made, not only in doing the 4 things that I'm just highlighting here, but progress we've made in the process that you have all pushed for in the process to be very different. And we kind of have an enumeration of that later in the agenda. But we're going to celebrate sort of 4 things right now, just really briefly, and talk about the air monitoring network, kind of how far we've come there, talk about the priority SERP measures, but really that's a chance to talk about how much further we have to go, kind of to Ivanka's point. Talk about some rule amendments and some upcoming opportunities to be involved in more of the regulatory work. And then also celebrate some of the community work. There's the research happening, I know, with a lot of you involved, and health studies. That was such a big discussion back in, remember when we started meeting in 2018, 2019? And I think the tone across the state in terms of how we support health studies has changed a lot. And so I just want to reflect on that briefly as well. So I'm just going to start, I'm going to share a few slides, but then we will pause for questions. But this is just to sort of get us thinking about what we've done, how we've done it, and maybe that will help kind of churn a little bit of some ideas on how we can apply some of what we've done for these successes in other areas that are maybe more challenging. So a lot of you, but not all of you, were at this meeting. This is a community developed air monitoring network that we talk about at every meeting. And I share this picture because this is literally how it happened. Several of us were meeting in person at the Air District and looking at a lot of data that, again, you all helped push for, helped make the district better in providing the types of data you needed in order to design this network that you see here, Kevin, here on the left, to really get to where we are now, where we have a real-time deployed network. We still have a long way to go, I think, in analyzing the data. That's what we talked about last meeting, but we've come really far in terms of developing a place for real-time air quality information. And again, I just want to thank you all for being a part of that and for helping us with that. I want to celebrate a little bit of the incentives milestones. So here, I'm going to walk us through this really slowly. So here, this dark green, these are all the funds that we've obligated, meaning it's under contract or we've spent. We have a lot of funding left to go. We're in the middle of funding a lot of things. And of course, we'll have a very specific meeting about SERP incentives whenever you all want at our next agenda setting meeting. But certainly, we're making progress. We also have a lot of funding left to work with CARB and you all on that we haven't discussed a lot lately. We're very focused on the high priority measures like tree planting and truck rerouting. We haven't talked a lot about residential vehicles, right? And we haven't talked a lot about a variety of other things that we need to work with you all on. So we look forward in this next year to kind of tackling these things kind of on the right of this graphic. I will celebrate all of these things down below, especially if you were here in the beginning. I think this is something to celebrate. We did not have a truck reroute study originally in our when we first kind of developed the SERP with you all. And now we're in the middle of we've kicked that process off and we're in the middle of a truck reroute study. We've now done 2 in-person events despite a lot of challenges with COVID, connecting with over 300 residents in the community and exchanging lawnmowers. We now, I say proposals, but now I can say successful tree planting proposals. Again, that was, if you were here in the beginning, there was admittedly a lot of trepidation on the district side for even adding these types of projects. And now we have $2 million in your SERP that are officially going to these projects. And then finally, we had a very tough time, even as of recently, working particularly with Fresno Unified. It's the largest district in the area with the most schools in our boundary on these 2 air filtration and electric buses projects. And we've now come so far to where we can say that they are committed, they are working with us, we have applications, and we're moving forward. So this is just progress a lot of you have helped us with. You brought the trustees to the table, you brought the city to the table, you brought Tree Fresno and CCEJN to the table. So I just want to celebrate you all and thank you all for all of this really unique process. This is not what other CSCs are doing across the state. I want to celebrate some milestones in terms of regulations. Now, I'm not going to say that these regulations were because of 617. A lot of you have been involved in our planning processes, right? You know that these regulations were regulations as a part of our planning processes. But we have committed and we want to continue to invite the CSC, as we did with all of these 7 rules that were amended, to be a part of these processes, to get involved, to bring residents to the meetings and the workshops we have on these rule development processes. We actually have a couple that are coming up really shortly here. These are transfer and storage of organic liquids. So that would affect places in the community that store fuel, for example, or conservation management practices. So that affects farms in the area, which we know are certainly on the west side. So just highlighting where we've come, where you can continue to be a part of the process and make a difference and have a lot of involvement. And then finally, some things that we don't really celebrate a lot. We've had a few folks, including Naimeen, bring some research partners to the table. But it's been a while, and I certainly would advocate for us continuing to stop and think, or even have like a monthly or quarterly update on maybe 1 or more of these projects. And this is research that's happening specifically. I know it just says Fresno for some of these, but this literally means Fresno AB 617 communities. These are 4 very specific, very interesting research projects, all trying to address knowledge gaps or track assessment of environmental and public health just in your community. And again, for those of you that were here at the beginning, this was not the case in the beginning. There were a lot of asks of the district. It is not something really that the district is not a research agency, but there are a lot of partners out there that we're just so grateful are partnering with you all, with local researchers, and getting a lot of great work done. Finally, we want to celebrate you all. This is Familias en Acción. This is Lilia's group. There's so much community work outside of this process, but within the community, and really in partnership with other community members that sit on this committee, in partnership with the district. And I want to highlight that it's not just through this process, but it's through all of your hard work that a lot of work gets done. So that's what this sort of reflects here. So I'm going to share a couple. I'm just going to go high level. I'm not going to read every box, but a couple of big process changes you guys have helped us make. And I think it's important because it reminds us that there's probably lots of process changes we can continue to make. And it's a reminder that with working together, we can make those differences. And so we started in 2018. A lot of you, but not all of you, were there with us. And in 2019, we did a lot of SERP development and community development, CSC development. It's a lot of just kind of the logistical work. But one of the things we did toward the end of that year is establish our community co-host process. If you remember, we didn't always have a co-host, and it's definitely different now than it was in 2019. In 2020, we actually had the SERP approved and adopted. Through that adoption, we added the truck study and land use coordination that was not originally there. We started virtual meetings. That wasn't necessarily on purpose. It was kind of forced with COVID, of course. But that allowed us to provide simultaneous interpretation virtually. It allowed us to have more subcommittee meetings because we didn't have to have folks away from home every few nights. It allowed us to be more flexible. We also, at the end of 2020, started those agenda setting meetings. We didn't used to have those. If you recall, we used to just kind of set the agenda, to be honest, kind of without the committee, right? We heard agenda topics at the end of the meeting and then surprise, it's the week before the meeting, here's what your agenda is. So we've definitely worked with you all on making that just so much more transparent. 2021, we had a lot of process changes. We started posting Spanish video recordings. Zoom didn't allow us to do that before, and we had an update that allowed us to do that. We had Harder & Company join us. I know for me, it feels like they've been here forever. They have not. We've had a lot of facilitators and some better than others, and I think we can all agree that things have improved. And we started, because of Harder & Company and your recommendation, we started that action item tracker that Stephanie reads out. And then we started new subcommittee web pages. We started doing a lot of work that needed a lot of places to house all of the work and all of the documentation. And then, of course, we've done in between all of these sort of non-bolded things, or all of the other processes we've done. This is not comprehensive of everything you've all accomplished, but certainly, like I said, a reminder to get you thinking as we look ahead of what we can do better. These are the things we've already worked together on doing better, and we've accomplished it with some good, collaboration. So we have a couple questions for you. Really thinking about the processes and how we've evolved together as a CSC. That's meeting structure, agenda, maybe translation or interpretation, any of those things. What are some processes that are working? And what are some opportunities or solutions you see for the more challenging processes? I think we do have a little Jamboard, so I might stop sharing. We'll have the questions on there so you can see your responses. And I'll also just pause and let you know the second half of this agenda topic is about resident participation. So you feel free to share a little bit about that, but we will dig into that and ask you some questions when we're done with this section.
So we're going to write, not mention verbally, or questions or comments.
Oh, no, you can mention verbally. I think we'll just maybe share. I don't know, Harder, do we want to share the screen with the Jamboard? But yeah, I mean, I think go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like we have worked a lot, right? It felt that way. Things that we can do better, in my opinion. I think looking at your presentation, I saw that a lot of the work has been focused on incentives. Incentives for the lawnmowers, incentives for the urban greening, for the this and that. I think it's time for us to take a closer look about what the district and all of us can do better in terms of enforcement. We have discussed in some meetings. We talked briefly about your indirect source rule. We start talking about the different, stationary sources and the pollution and all that. So I would personally like to take a deeper dive at that and see what else can be done in terms of enforcement. The second thing I think has been up in the air, and I was just reflecting that it's been over a year that we had the very first conversation about participatory budget, and we have not continued it. Both Air District and CARB gave a very good description of the processes so far, but that was the part one. We were going to continue to see what us as CSC members would like to see so that we can have a more participation in that process. So I would like for us to revisit that and bring that to the future meeting agendas. And the third one that I think personally I would like to see is we have been collecting a lot of data, air quality. So now what? What's going to happen with all that data? How are we going to translate that into improved air quality for these communities? in addition to what has been done already. I think acting on the data for me is super important. I also would like to put on the table, you know, what about incorporate, and I have said it so many times, when is this data going to be merged into your RAN system so that everybody has access to that and to the text alerts that you guys send? And even part of your regulatory network, like I don't think it makes sense to me to see readings very high in the Edison High monitor while we have, and the regulatory monitor is, you know, in another area less polluted, being the one that is influencing the standards and it's seeing if we're meeting those regulations. So I'll stop there because I'm sure others have a lot of feedback.
That was great. It's exactly the kind of feedback we're hoping to get from everybody. So yeah, would love to see if anyone else has any thoughts they would like to share. I think we'll focus on taking comments from the CSC for now. I do see Estella, you just put your hand up. Please go ahead.
Pues buenas tardes a todos. Pues como dicen Ayamín, ¿verdad? Tenemos datos de que sí está contaminado el aire y todo eso están recolectando, lo están haciendo bien. Pero después de eso, ¿qué va a pasar? ¿Qué se va a hacer con la contaminación? Si sabemos que está contaminado, ¿qué es la acción? Queremos mirar el cambio para que no esté contaminado el aire. ¿Qué es lo que se va a hacer? ¿Qué va a pasar? Pues todavía siguen enfermándose personas mientras que está contaminado el aire. Todo eso. Entonces, no, pues no, para mí también no tiene sentido también que se recolecten los datos de la contaminación y no hay un cambio. Gracias.
Yeah, thank you, Estella. So we're hearing from folks that they would like to see more action taken with all of the data that we're collecting and discussing. I'm wondering if anyone from their district would like to just briefly comment on that.
I think right now, because her comments and Naeem's comments are very spot on. And I think that's just a discussion we need to have. Not only how the data is being collected and disseminated, but what are the roles of the different agencies. And I think CARB has a really great tool that they've been in process of developing, of collecting the data, really to Naeem's point, not just on the community level, but also the regulatory network. So we definitely want to note that as like an action to address and to have a further discussion on that, Liz.
Thank you. Yes, so we'll keep note of that. Isabel, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo tenía comentario acerca de las contaminaciones. Yo no sé qué tanto están monitoreando todas las industrias, porque yo en las mañanas miro acá por donde vivo, que hay algunas industrias que echan mucho humo, como que yo pienso que es mucha contaminación que hay. Allá por el lado de la CIRA, enfrente de la Huevona, también hay un lugar donde echa mucho humo en las mañanas. Estoy mirando, luego que a veces paso por ahí y hay muchísimo humo. Yo no sé si eso ya no está contaminando o si está contaminando o si están haciendo algo para chequear todas esas industrias que están por acá cerca, alrededor. Ese era mi comentario.
I'll just briefly ask, can you say where, well, I'll just say if we regularly enforce and inspect all of those sources, but can you clarify the location you were just mentioning, Isabel, so we can make sure to follow up if there's a recent issue that you're seeing? We definitely want to do that.
Sí, acá por la Orange hay una empresa que se me hace que es Craft o algo así, por este lado, así cerca de la Jensen, ese lugar donde yo miro que hace mucho humo. Y luego aquí por la Cedar, pues cerca de los trajes del tren, hay una, pues está el empaque de fruta, la huevona, y al cruzar la calle hay un establecimiento vacío y enseguida hay otro edificio y es donde miro mucho humo en las mañanas. Son dos lugares que he visto últimamente haciendo eso.
Thank you. I think so. We've taken note of that as well. Ivanka, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
I'll start with the thought that's really kind of leading off of Isabel's comments, which really is, now that we have that data and we're continually collecting that data, in the space of, we know that this is the 617 area that got granted because we competitively are the worst at the pollution for this area of Fresno. And yet at the same time, you continue to see those land use decisions made by the city to continue to use poorly created environmental impact reports that are lies based upon other lies to make it look like the CEQA is actually being followed, when in actuality, if you are making environmental impact reports that are based off of inaccuracies, then this is the time that we must use this data to truly identify and guide and correct what those decisions that the city may be making. Now, I know the general statement is, oh, she's talking about land use. Oh, we don't have any authorization to do anything. Yet, if you have the data that can inform and prove whether or not the decisions that a city is making is based off of a truth or not, then that is where you need to apply this information in multiple other ways too, but specifically for land use. This data that's being collected just isn't about how to enforce better, like Isabel is saying about these very specific stationary sources, but it also is the data that is needed to prove why more stationary sources that are polluting industries don't belong here. So it's really twofold in that it's for the enforcement of what's already here to improve that, but it's also for the guiding and the proof that the land use decisions that have been going on for so long that are perpetuating the environmental injustices in Black and Brown communities, that this information, if science doesn't lie, then you need to use that information. And we really are at a point where we are seeing faulty environmental impact analysis from the city that are being guided by misinformation that is not truly taking into account the accumulative effects of the different types of pollution that are already currently here, and that is only going to get worse because the city wants to allow more industrial uses. So the fact that it's enforcement, but it's also using the data to prove the lies of the land use decisions that continue to be made in this city. I know that's a lot, but it needs to be said, and it also needs to be really connected to the purpose of why we are doing the work and why we've spent this time in the 617 space to find this data and create those ways to actually improve the communities. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see, Lilia, you have your hand up.
Sí, pero antes la tenía Lisa.
Yes, I think we're going to continue with our practice of holding the public comments until the end of the agenda item. So right now we're going to focus on taking the resident and other CSE member comments.
I'm sorry, but Lilia doesn't know that I was thrown off the committee. So that's probably why she stated that.
Yeah, there have been some membership changes. And again, this has been a conversation that we've been having, and we do have time in this agenda as well to talk about those processes and, you know, put those decisions back into the hands of the CSE. So we will get there. But for now, we are talking more on general CSE processes. So before we get to that membership conversation, Lilia, please do feel free to share your thought or question.
Sí, solamente quiero darle seguimiento a lo que estaba diciendo la compañera Isabel. Solamente nosotros como residentes de esta área, yo sé que somos parte del ABC 17, por eso es que estamos aquí. La calle es la Garretti, East Garretti y la Orange, están unas industrias ahí fuertes. Todas las mañanas cuando uno se levanta, solamente al salir afuera a respirar disque aire limpio, lamentablemente es puro olor muy fuertes. No sé si en las noches es cuando más trabajan las personas o quizás haya menos viento y cuando levantamos en la mañana es cuando están los olores más fuertes. Entonces estas industrias posiblemente de noche es cuando trabajen más. Entonces, quizás eso es lo que se refiere a Isabel. Y sí, yo soy parte de este residente de aquí cerca del área también y también lo percibo. Entonces, como dijo también Estela, si están haciendo los estudios, pues los cambios siguen iguales. Yo no miramos cambios en ese sentido porque los olores siguen igual. Y como en este caso Estela tiene niños enfermos de asma, él puede darse cuenta que sus niños no se les puede controlar su asma. Entonces, quiere decir que estamos haciendo las cosas mal. Entonces, tenemos que tener un poquito más puesta la mano en el renglón para seguir avanzando hacia adelante y mirar los cambios de verdad positivamente porque nuestros niños merecen eso y más. Y nuestras personas de la tercera edad también. Entonces, pasando a otro punto, estamos pasando con la lluvia muy fuerte. Lamentablemente, estamos hablando de los árboles. Muchos de los árboles se cayeron. Entonces, tenemos que trabajar más fuerte para poder tener árboles que no se caigan tan fácilmente y que sean resistentes más fuerte a estas tormentas, porque de verdad estamos en caos. Cayeron árboles enormes en casas completas y autos destruidos por todas partes. Otra de las cosas es que tenemos que ponerle más mano dura a la ciudad de Fresno para que no haya tanto basuras en la calle, porque ya miré que estamos aquí Familias en Acción, pero Familias en Acción no está para todo Fresno, lamentablemente. Entonces, las alcantarillas de los drenajes se taparon por completo a consecuencia de tanta basura que se encuentra en las calles. Entonces, tenemos que trabajar más arduamente para poder avanzar hacia adelante y que tanto el subsuelo se limpie como también el aire, el medio ambiente de nuestros contaminantes se quiten del medio ambiente para que sigamos adelante nosotros con una salud mejorable. Es todo.
Thank you, Lilia. And yeah, I just want to thank you for saying that all. We hear you and we hear the theme from other community members. This is why it's so important to have you all come to these meetings, because you have all of this knowledge, you see what's working and what's not working in your community. And so, yeah, it's so important, even though this work is hard, for you all to continue being here to, push for that change that we do need to see moving forward. So thank you for your passion in those comments. Are there any other thoughts or ideas? What processes are working, what are not working, and what are some opportunities for some solutions and change? Estela, go ahead.
Sí, también quería decir, pues también estas lluvias también pues se debe al calentamiento de la tierra, porque pues se está calentando más. Al calentarse es porque hay todavía contaminación. Entonces, es de urgencia, emergencia, que se haga algo para que no se caliente tanto la tierra con la contaminación, porque se está calentando mucho. No es normal que esté lloviendo tanto. En estos tiempos no es cuando cae nieve, no es que esté lloviendo mucho y es algo que sí preocupa. A mí me preocupa porque la tierra se está calentando de más debido a la contaminación, tantos contaminantes, tantos pesticidas. Es mucho lo que está recibiendo el aire. Por eso es que estas lluvias se vienen también.
Thank you, Estela. You are very right. It's a scary world out there. It's scary thinking about what's going to change. And your comment shows how connected all of these issues are. And we can't just talk about pesticides or black carbon in the air without talking about climate change and how it's all connected. So we do have to remember, yeah, how all of our work is connected. So thank you. Any other thoughts about opportunities or solutions? Dr. Curry?
Yeah, thank you. Given that I agree with what's been said already about the importance and usage of the data that we're collecting, and I'm curious about what we think are the next steps in terms of working with the city more collaboratively, and how do we push for the inclusion of this data and the cumulative health impacts that our study will look at? How are we insisting that that information be a part of decision-making processes in a way that it's that the data is current and is relevant and speaks to the health concerns that people have? And so if the city doesn't want to engage with an MOU, what are the other ways that we can consistently include this information so that it's always a part of any report, that it's always included and it's always highlighted? And I do appreciate the fact that I was there in 2018, and I did talk about the importance of health and looking at the impacts. And I am pleased to see that it's in the process, that UC Merced has come to the table, that we actually are talking about health outcomes, even as we talk about all of the incentives that are being provided to these different industries. So I am pleased to see that.
And I just want to acknowledge Dr. Curry's comment is, it's not the first time she's raised this particular piece, and it was one of our action items we went over about working with the city and providing this data. And definitely, I think as we move forward with not just collecting data, but analyzing the data and understanding the sources better to communicate it better, we definitely want to keep that channel open. And to your point, Dr. Curry, work with everyone on communicating it to all the right parties, agencies, government, other partners.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments on this? If not, I'm wondering, Jess, if you are thinking we should transition to the next set of questions, or how would you like to move forward?
Excuse me, I still had a comment.
I really would love to hear from Lisa, and
that's
she's
what I was
been
going
really
to say
patient.
too.
But I'm also thinking how this process is really, it is a little bit disjointed, because if we move on to another issue and then we come back and we hope people will stick around. And so I do hope we're trying to figure that out in a way that feels more respectful and feels more inclusive.
Yes, and I agree with Dr. Curry. I think typically we've said at the end of each item, but since this item sort of has 2 natural breaks, I think this is perfect time for public comment and input.
Sounds great. Yeah, Lisa, would love for you to share.
Well, I'm looking at your questions, and the first thing is the process working. The process is incredibly dysfunctional as far as I'm concerned. And I will give kudos to everybody that's on this committee for putting up such a gallant fight to do right by the community and to bring the issues to the forefront. And I would encourage them to continue to do that. Because of your activism, things are slowly changing, but they are changing. The opportunities and solutions and the challenges within the process. I think a big issue is policy, land use, and also the internal review process of the Air District. We never really get to see what the Air District says on some of these major issues in the Southwest. And I'm just kind of curious to see if there's any way there's could be an audit of the projects that have come before them, what they've said, what is the cumulative data at that point in which they made a comment, and was it correct when you look at what the actual data is versus what they were presented, and what was the policy change, or what was the impact of projects that went through on the communities and the community and the cumulative impact. I just want to see, an audit of the review process, the planning review process of the Air District, because I do not think they're doing everything that they can do. Because a lot of agencies from what I've been dealing with, who've dealt with the Air District, they just feel like it's a very rubber stamped kind of generic. And I would like to see, are the agencies wrong? Are the letters wrong? Is there a pattern that needs to be found, whether it's right or wrong, to adjust the system or the interaction between the city, the county, the state? Because these incentive programs aren't really going to change anything. They may change things 10% because that's what typical change typically does. But when you start to look at changes within the policy and the review process, that's where you can really make an impact. And also too, I would like to see there's opportunities. I have yet to see one single Air District staff person at a city council meeting in the last 2 years to really talk about the impact of a project, even doing a presentation about the trees, about the truck reroute. It's always city staff. And, if you guys do good work, you should be out there getting some of the glory and some of the PR in the public and letting people know that you guys are actually around and what you do. Because when you create those bridges, you get a better outcome with problematic projects.
Well said, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And I do see people were taking notes throughout your comment. We have all of that written down here, as well as what other folks were saying. I think if we have no other comments on this slide, yeah, Jess, would you like to move forward?
I will. So I'm going to stop that screen share. I'm going to screen share with mine and kind of talk a little bit. It's related. And I think a lot of us across the board will agree it might even be related to some of the processes and the frustrations and the challenges and the hard work we've accomplished this past year. And that has to do with membership. I think, I'll tell you about the slide and then we can kind of postulate together what we think is going on. But certainly, as you all know, we did a membership renewal across all the different CSCs in August 2022. We did a lot of follow-up since then, so it took us a while to sort of get the final numbers. We wanted to make sure we gave everyone sort of an opportunity to reconfirm or share with us why they didn't want to participate, because that was the case for some folks. We followed up with all the members in every capacity we could, so phone calls, texts, emails. We reached out to some CSC members who we knew were affiliated with folks if we did have trouble getting a hold of them, and that tended to be pretty successful for us as well. So just to kind of let you know how we reached out to folks. As you all know, or maybe you don't remember, for those that were in the beginning, and I say July 2019 because it was sort of after we established the boundary and we fully recruited everyone. This was sort of the height of our CSC. As far as voting percentage, so there were 50 voting eligible members. Exactly 50% of them were residents. We had 25 residents and then 25 in total business and community-based organization partners and school and healthcare representatives. And then we had 3 government folks that sort of sat, as you all know, they're not voting members, but they sit to help sort of respond in their capacity as a government member. So in total, that was 53 people. After this most recent renewal, and certainly there's been a lot happening between, but as of this most recent renewal, we have 19 people. And pretty much most of that drop came from resident members. So we can definitely have a conversation in a second about what we think happened. I just want to kind of run through exactly what sort of happened since then to be really transparent. So after we adopted the SERP, a lot of people sort of indicated they no longer had time. A lot of people were really there for that initial really hard work we did in 2019. And pretty much through the end of 19, through the renewal process, there were about 29 people, or I should say exactly 29 people on our roster. So that was when we started the renewal process. And then through the renewal process, we sort of had 10 members not renew for various reasons. So I have them indicated here. 4 of the residents hadn't been there since February 2022, and some of them even since 2021. And they either had bounce back emails, we couldn't get a hold of them on phone or mail or email. We reached out to some community members to see if they could help. One particular member actually just asked to be removed. They just no longer had time or capacity. So as of right now, unless we hear back from them, we're happy to take them back. We did take them off the email list and took them off the roster just to be transparent to you all about actual participating members. We did have one CBO member that hadn't been to a meeting in a couple of years. And so we similarly remove them. If for some reason that organization does find time and wants to come back, we would happily have them back on. But again, for transparency's sake about what the actual roster looks like, we took them off as well. We also used the same kind of number of attempts to reach out to them. We did have 5 members of the businesses and community remove. Couple folks left organizations, and so far no one from their organization has sort of stepped up to replace them. We had 1 member that hadn't been to a meeting at all in 2022, and we were unable to get a hold of them. We had 1 member that asked to no longer participate kind of in their capacity, and then 1 business member that just no longer qualified to be on the CSC per the outline in our charter for qualifications. So that's just sort of the process that led to us now being at 19 members. We all know, first of all, that is even with 19 members, we do not have 50% residents. And you all know that resident participation per the blueprint and per all of our interest is of utmost importance to all of us. So we want to work with you all. And maybe part of this discussion is sort of like, why do we think that is? Is there something about the process? Is there something just about the time commitment? In terms of people leaving the committee, but also how do we get more residents? And so similarly, we have a Jamboard activity. We really want to hear from you about what you think would help us, recruit people. Maybe we have like an in-person, really exciting event with like prizes and giveaways and clean air technology, and you all sort of being the spokesperson for the CSC. Maybe we just do a big mail out like we did in the very beginning. Some of you might remember that's sort of how we got people, is we reached out to CBO partners and we kind of sent out a big mailer about being involved. How do we recruit? Maybe are there other sectors we no longer have officially, although we do have, of course, a doctor on the committee. We don't officially have someone representing in their official capacity on like a healthcare or a school person. So are there other sectors we want to recruit for? I'll stop there. Let us open up the Jamboard and continue to have this discussion with you all. And of course, we're going off from your input, the assumption that resident recruitment is important, but please share with us kind of how you feel about kind of the next stage of our establishing kind of our CSC membership.
So I'll share my screen, and while I'm doing that, Ed, I see your hand is up, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Some of the things that I've thought about to reach out to the community, and I am concerned that our community is fully represented. I believe the Hoacan community isn't represented at all, and it's a significant portion of our AB 617 footprint. But my first thoughts are, I don't think mailers have much meaning. I think potentially television advertisements have meaning if we can target a certain area in Fresno. I think radio has some meaning. I think we need to be talking to some of the churches in the area. There are churches that would have people that would be interested in this. I'm absolutely certain of that. But how do they get that information? And I'm not the brain trust for this. I just think that these are some places that we need to try, at least try. I mean, I think we could get some positive growth. You put it beside the Stockton CSC, and Catholic Charities is very involved in the Stockton group. That's why I think churches I think they're really well built and well suited to bring some people that care to the table. So anyway, enough said. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you. Any other ideas for how we can recruit new resident members? Maybe are there any barriers you've noticed that we can address somehow? Yeah, Ivanka, go ahead.
Specific of what you need help with.
I'm sorry, what was that? I missed that question.
To be more specific with what you need help with.
Oh, be more specific. I think we're just trying to specifically focus on the process for recruiting new members, specifically residents, given that the number of residents in the CSC has dropped so much. We're wondering, are there any barriers that you've noticed to participating in the CSCs that we can address to increase our resident participation, or yeah, just any ideas around that? Ivanka, go ahead.
Go ahead, Naomi. Your hand was up before mine.
Okay.
Are you sure? No, I think you were stuck. I'll keep it short, Ivanka. Well, I don't know. I think that this type of processes could be intimidating. Frankly, it's not easy to understand this. So I'm not too sure if I agree with like a, more like social media or like common marketing approach. I think it's better if we do like, let's say, people who are already participating, residents, us as advocates, can think of people that already are eager to make changes in their community, that they're interested in, and that they're already active in a way, And I know that I know people that I have recruited that some moved out, others start working in the evening. So there were very valid reasons, but I think we can, and I at least personally can commit to do an exercise of who of the community members that I know of who live in the AB 607 boundary would be fit that criteria or that profile that I just described, and try to have a one-on-ones with them to see if they will be willing. And if I see that there is interest, I will do a handoff to some of the staff from the Air District that could assist with the form, etc. So that would be my suggestion.
I was just going to add that I know that Edison High School is not the only school in the AB 617 community, but also I'm a little leery on using them as the example, because those of us who know what educational redlining is, there's students there that live in the 93706, and then there's students there at that school that do not. And to be specific, we really need to see students that are living in the zip code, whether it's that high school but that youth voice from residents that are truly impacted, not the ones that are being bussed in. Yeah, they might spend 8 hours of their day there, but some of them are, I don't want to get off into that, but I really want to talk about the students that are living in the community that need to know how to do civic engagement, who need to know how to do this type of advocacy, because if this is where they're going to continue to live, this is a space that they can learn it and learn it well with other mentors of community members that are already on here. So I really think we need to uplift some of the leadership programs that are within the high schools. I don't know how much time, Liz, we have left for this item, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on discussing how it was decided who can and cannot stay on membership. So if we want to continue with this, that's fine. But I think there's those of us on this committee that don't understand a part of why Lisa is no longer on the membership, yet she's one of the most dedicated people. And even though she's no longer by Air District standards considered a member, is very much still dedicated and still here. So there's that issue. I don't want to take us off of these other, but I do think that that deserves to be discussed in this time too.
I agree with you, Ivanka, but I just wanted to comment and agree with some comments that were made by Nyameen and yourself. Also, like uplifting the youth's voice. We do have residents that are already on our committee. So asking those residents, is there anyone active in their community or that they're working with that would like to be a part of this? Reaching out to high schools and even middle schools, I think, they have climate clubs, all the clubs that their students are a part of, to get their voice heard and get them involved in this process. Those comments were already made. I just wanted to agree with those comments and go on record because those were some of the things that I was thinking of. And then we also have CBOs that sit on this committee that has a network of residents that they work with already that are very interested and very vocal. So reaching out to these CBOs like Nyameen's organization, like Sandra Celadon's Fresno Building Healthy Communities organization, Ivanka's organization that she works for, Leadership Council, Justice and Accountability. We do have that network of residents that we work with that live in the areas that we are advocating for that may be a part of this CSC. So just reaching out.
Naomi, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I've seen in the chat several people saying that, yeah, they would like to do like that brainstorming of who of the residents could be approached and all that. So I would like to add to the things of actionable things that if we could convene a meeting of interested CSC members, I would like to, brainstorm, bring up names and a strategy. I would love for that to happen, and I would like to be added to that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I see Amy suggested in the chat possibly an outreach subcommittee. I know there are a lot of subcommittees, but that does seem like it could be a good space for this. And we will put that on our action item tracker. So we'll not lose that, and we'll be sure to follow up on getting something like that started. And so I see a few folks put their hands down, and I know that we are running a little short on time. So I'll let Bill, please share your thoughts, and then after that, we'll come back and talk about how we want to use the rest of the time. So Bill, go ahead.
All I was going to mention is perhaps if someone put together something they could send by email, that if you had someone interested, you could give them, like a little pamphlet, or even if you forward it to them in email fashion, but have something that just basically, give out to a fellow resident or something to maybe see if they might want to be involved or not, just to basically outline what's involved and that sort of thing. It sounds like there's quite a few people that might have good ideas, whether it's through their schools or whatever, that if they had something available to hand out for them to look at and then get back to someone, that might simplify it a little bit. That's all.
I can add as an action item, Liz, that the district, it sounds like there's unanimous support for doing some sort, like definitely getting residents back on in a capacity that maybe is a little targeted, which I appreciate. And there seems to be a lot of support for that. I totally agree with Bill. I think that needs to come with something. So folks not only get expectations like from Naimeen, who knows the process really well and can verbally explain it to them, but also they can have something they take with them, they can review on their own. It does remind me, and I don't know how much we want to spend time, there is some time on the agenda. There's also an item I know that's of interest to folks from the city. But one of the slides here, and maybe it's part of the outreach committee, we tackle this, is onboarding, because to Naimeen's point, this isn't something like a brand new person comes in and then just imagine if they were like, today's meeting's a little different because it's review, but they come to a meeting and we're deep in incentives or deep in land use, and there's a lot to handle. So we would work with you all. We did this in Stockton to create a space where we onboard folks, maybe use some of you to help train the new people and get them up to speed. So that's something to keep in mind too. But we can put as an action item creating some sort of, we have a kind of a version of a flyer and maybe working with you all in a subcommittee to update it.
Yes, thank you. So we have noted that as well. So I see, Lisa, your hand is up. We can take your comment too before discussing where we should go next for tonight's agenda.
Yeah, if anybody wants any information of how I was let go, I'm more than willing to relay the situation where, as a member of a protected class under ADA, I asked for assistance in filling out the questionnaire, the survey that was asked of me, and then was asked incredibly leading questions, and then was told that they had to take it back to some committee that I didn't even know who the members were, and literally an hour later, they threw me off. And before they did that, I asked him, I didn't ask him. I told him, I said, you've been wanting me off this committee, and this is going to be your way. So let's just call it what it is. And I just want to be very transparent and out there. The reasons why just really actually make no sense. As many of you on this call from the committee, residents get paid $75. Those that represent organizations, you get your time paid. I do freelancing consulting work with another associate of mine, and who lives in the outline of the map, in the map area. I currently live less than 50 yards from the border. So the simplest solution around staff's decision to throw me off this committee would be to include my neighborhood. I am looking at alternative situations in resolving the situation. including legal, based on, well, I really don't want to get into that. But one of my concerns is when you bring on people, you're going to have a very transparent, very clear and concise objectives that you're going to try to achieve in the remainder part of AB 617. You're going to have somebody who is not only culturally competent at doing presentations to these communities, but also can come up with a short course that isn't wasting people's time. Because I will tell you, for the past 2 years, I've been sitting through a lot of presentations that could have been clearer, more concise, and straight to the point. And I also think that you will lose anywhere from 50 to 75% of the people that you've recruited based on interactions with the Air District. And the time waste that we've had to struggle through in the last 2 years.
So Liz and Ivanka, I know you raised before me, but I can directly answer, and I know it wasn't a question you had, Ivanka, unless you wanted to go before me.
Yeah, I just wanted to be very going back to the blueprint, and the blueprint really in our charter, which stated that you could be in this committee whether you were working industry resident, EJ, and she never was in this space. Lisa was never in this space as a resident. She has always been in this space as being employed. And if she tells you where her address is of an employment and you dig and try to discriminate further to find a way to out her, that's wrong. And it shouldn't be allowed that because to my understanding, from the time that initial application that she put in during the time of that initial charter that still stands, there is nothing that she is giving you on that application that is different from the time that she's been on this committee since the beginning. There has been no change in her home address. There has been no change in her work address. And so I do believe her that this is a discriminatory practice to get her out of a committee, which is the wrong person to be trying to discriminate against, especially we've known that she's had disabilities. Like, I wouldn't, as an air district, want to be taking on an ADA lawsuit. And you're opening yourself up to liability, and it's going against the whole intention, the whole purpose of what Community Steering Committee meeting is really about. The nice thing that I think has brought like a real broadness to the types of businesses, we have Bill, we have Ed, we have industry-led businesses that are on here. She's really the only one that's work business that is on more of an EJ committee, an EJ or a resident feel. So like so if she's and that shouldn't be used against her. She is a business member. What my point is, if you're looking at the facts, none of her facts have changed. The only thing that has changed is somebody thought to take her request for ADA compliance to walk her through that renewal application and dig further. If she didn't have a challenge with trying to just fill out the application that the rest of us had to do, you would not have had the opportunity to find a way to try to out her, because it would have just been the basic information that we all filled out. But then you want to take it to a verbal level of digging. That's harassment. That's discrimination.
Okay, can I talk?
I just want to say that I think also that we as this committee should have the right to, as committee members, decide if we think that was fair or not. And I'll start there, Jessica.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, nothing in her renewal membership was different than the application Lisa physically filled out when we were in an opportunity. So there's nothing different or that digging that happened. All that happened was Lisa let us know she does not represent Krugman Consulting in an official capacity, and confirmed if this has changed, Lisa, you let me know, and I'm happy. And I've told a few of you this when I called, and we've talked about this. If you currently are employed or represent the business, then that's okay. All I'm saying is that through this process, and you saw our transparent.
Okay, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. What happened, I was in bed, medicated, called you guys and said, I got cataracts. You know, what are the questions and did they change from the last one? And Heather said, nothing's changed. And I said, well, go ahead and use that. And then she started asking questions.
Lisa, if anything has, so we followed up with you on a written account of everything that happened. So if you, at any point, we have not heard back from you that you do currently work for Krugman Consulting, which is in the boundary, and we agree with you, has always been a business within the boundary. So if you currently represent Krugman Consulting and you work for that business, and that is a business in the address, we are happy to take your response. And that's why we followed up with you in a very detailed email about not only our charter and what it outlines, about exactly what Ivanka said. It's certainly—
You didn't, no, that was not the conversation.
That
was not the conversation.
If at any point you want to, including right now, follow up and say, that is incorrect. Everything that you just said in your email is incorrect, and you do represent Krugman Consulting, please let us know. And that stands for anyone else who has since no longer worked for the business. We've removed anyone that no longer works for the current business that they were originally on. Rick Spurlock is a prime example of that. He represented Rio Bravo. We took him off the subcommittee, or took him off the committee when he no longer worked for that business. We did the
your
same
email
process.
does not your email say that that he doesn't have a business license? Did not your staff, or possibly you, I forget which one, I would have to dig up my notes, basically say that I had to go into an office? There was a lot more to the discussion than
there are certainly different ways to represent a business. One is physically being at the business, and the other is directly representing.
And you made determinations because you looked for a business license, and you put it in writing. So you're not actually representing what the Air District has stated.
Lisa, I'm happy to have you share. I'm happy to have you share the email that I directly sent with anyone that you'd like to share it with. I'm happy to continue the discussion, and I'm happy if you tell me right now to say that you directly represent Krugman Consulting.
As I told you before, nothing has changed on the original written document.
All right. Well, we'll continue to reach out to you if you want to say right now that you directly represent Krugman Consulting. Please let us know.
Nothing has changed from the original application.
All right. So I think Liz, if we want to, or I see Dr. Curry has raised her hand.
Yeah, I'm really disturbed by this conversation, and I guess given that we've just looked at the numbers of people who are no longer willing to participate, it really just seems unusual that for someone who has been so willing and has been such a voice, whether or not you agree with the voice or not, but the participation has been full and has been helpful in so many different ways. And it just seems troubling that we would have this kind of discussion when we're trying to actually recruit membership. And here we have someone who very much wants to be a part of the team or the committee. Is there not a way where we can figure out something that makes sense? I don't know what the boundary looks like, but I do believe that initially the boundary didn't include Southwest Fresno. And so the idea that could be left out didn't make sense at that time. Is there a portion of wherever the boundary borders that it makes sense to include that? Can that be considered an extension or an expansion? It just seems like we would not want to turn away people who want to be a part of this process and bring so much to the table. And so the discussion is just troubling in so many different ways, but I just feel like we can figure out a way to work this out so that Lisa is a part of the committee because she is very valuable in what she brings to the table, and her willingness to be a part of this for the last several years and engage on so many different topics and provide so much insight. Again, we're looking for members and we're looking for people to commit time. And she's done both of those. So I would hope that we could figure out a way to make that happen. Thank you.
Liz, and then I'll go to Naomi. Can you put as an action item for the district to kind of follow up, not only just on membership as a whole, but certainly what can we do to make, adjustments there? And to Dr. Curry's point, it really was the community that changed the boundary, right? And that was that discussion we had in 2019. So thanks, Dr. Curry.
Yes, that is noted. Thank you. And Naomi, go ahead.
Yeah, I am also agreeing with Dr. Curry in the fact that we're on one end eager to get more residents and participating, and we have a very active member and we're kicking her out. And I think I've mentioned to you, Jessica, that we should see how we can go about like enabling participation more than blocking it. So I think it will be very important, especially if I don't know, you guys tell us, but if we can mediate or not mediate, but be part of that discussion so that we could actually help find a solution to this, because I would want Lisa to come back, and I would like for us to have a brainstorm and see, if she's already telling you that the situation that bring her in the first place to the steering committee did not change. She represents this company that is in the boundaries. I don't even know why we're spending all this time talking about it. It should have been just like like what happened with Cesar. We don't even need to feel anything else. He's on board, right? So I wish we can just turn the page and get her back in and move on, because we have a lot of work to do together. And for me, this is just like, we're spinning our wheels on something that we shouldn't.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. And we hear you all. We've been taking notes. This was the kind of conversation that we were hoping to have tonight. So thank you all so much for engaging. It sounds like, of course, we still have a lot more to talk about. We've noted as an action item that the Air District will engage in this process of recruiting new members, talking about like changing geographic boundaries with the support of the CSC members. So that will be a collaborative process. And we are a little over time, but I think that was definitely a rich conversation. So I think we can probably wrap up and move on to our next agenda item. I'll also note that in the chat, the link to the Jamboard was shared with everybody. And so after this meeting, you're still welcome to go into that link and type in any more thoughts or comments. So I will stop sharing my screen. So at our last meeting, the CSC shared their concerns about the current public notification process for new land use projects that are within the South Fresno area. And so since then, the Air District has been in communication with the city of Fresno about ways to address your concerns. So the city has offered to join tonight's meeting, and I do believe that they are here so that they can share some updates with you all. And we do have, I think, a little less than 10 minutes for this agenda item, but this is really more for you all to hear some of their initial ideas, provide some feedback, and just open the line of communication. So we will continue this conversation after tonight. And so I see Scott, hello, feel free to take it away.
All right, good evening, everyone, and a robust discussion on some other items. It's good to be here. So I'll start this one off. I did have a chance to discuss this update with our Planning and Development Director, Jennifer Clark. And just in summary, the city is updating its noticing procedures. Our approach is we are creating a list serve for anyone interested in receiving notices on current planning projects. So the goal is to really facilitate that, make that much easier. And city staff will be providing an update to both the Air District and the AB 617 Community Steering Committee when it is complete. So that is in process. Essentially, that's a bulk notice for anyone who wants to see what gets posted on the city clerk's webpage. And so for anyone who then subscribes to that listserv, you would receive those notices. And then once subscribed and once set up, that would really be an automatic process to receive those updates. So with that, that's really the extent of the update. We will be sharing that as it's complete, and it's just we're working on the IT side of that, on the programming of that, to make sure that that flows smoothly, because obviously we have a good level of interest in receiving those notices more seamlessly. So with that, be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions about that update? Yeah, go ahead, Ivanka.
Thanks, Scott. The only problem with that is that's nothing new. Any of us that are in the world of knowing about, in the nonprofit world, land use issues, we know that you can call in and say, or write in and say, according to whichever code it is, that you want to be noticed. So it's good that you're doing it from your end instead of every individual having to do that, but it's a process that's already been in play. I mean, you're expanding it, but it's nothing that new. And it's also putting the burden on the individual to have to figure out, what do I do with this information now, versus the whole point of the MOU was so that the city would be agreeable to bringing individual permitted uses that are applications to the CSC to say, hey, we have Penny Newman Grain Facility trying to expand in Malaga right now. Hey, we have another project in Kawa. We have Caltrans that's trying to expand within the 617. We have a Coca-Cola distribution facility that's expanding in 617, right? And all those that I just listed, did anybody know about that on this call? Those are all permitted applications that are pending right now that Leadership Council, CCEJN, the normal environmental justice communities that are trying to stay abreast of all of these projects that just keep hitting us. It's like playing damn whack-a-mole. Every time you turn around, there's a new permitted source or application that is trying to come about. Let's not forget the Elm Avenue rezone. Like, there's all these different projects that, while we sit here spending our time and our energy trying to improve a community that's already been proven to be overburdened, the city is still thinking it's okay to move forward. So yes, I appreciate the fact that you're going to do this, but that is nothing new, especially when you talk about the technology of this. Somebody that checks agendas of planning commission, city council every Friday to see what is this city trying to slide by us again. You have a clerk's page for clerk's notices that is just a complete debacle. Everything's just literally thrown in there when a stamp hits it. There is no rhyme or reason. You can't tell when the last time you went through this list of what the project is. It's just that. If you want to talk about technology it's not fluent, it's hard to read by any layman person, and it's hard to keep up with somebody, for me, that does this every Friday to check those agendas and those permits. So thank you, but that's not enough. Like, we still need an MOU. We still need real actions with this city because, again, you know this, the Attorney General is looking at us. We have CARB on the call. You have Strategic Growth Council that gave us TCC money. All of that was not to give competitive funding to our city to then say, oh, we have funds to shut up those Black and brown people. See, we care a little bit about you, and then give you the right to continue to do the same old mess that's been done for so long. So I will continue to bring up the fact that this steering committee needs to come up with something. If I don't care if you call it an MOU or any other name for the agreement, but there has to be something done. We never got to finish the process of looking at that MOU that Jennifer first brought to us. How do you find it okay that the city just gets to walk away from something like this? It's not okay. Like, the whole spirit of trying to improve communities that have been dumped on for so long, and then just the audacity of it is really egregious. So I will stop there. I hope the CSC members understand why I'm kind of passionate about that, because it's really just slapping us in the face.
Thank you, Ivanka. Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
Sure, Ivanka, I wanted to say thank you for the feedback, and I will definitely take that back to the city leadership team. As you know, I'm not personally I'm neither the planning director or the city manager on that, but I will definitely take that back to the team. And we'll continue the dialogue.
Yeah, thank you. And we have a few hands up. So Dr. Curry, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm just curious if the city were interested in making some different decisions, what kind of information would be most helpful? So the air monitoring data that's being gathered, the health impact study that will have some results. I mean, how do you envision this information becoming a part of your decision-making? And instead of us, sort of reacting to, there's another effort to put something else like an industry in a place that's already overburdened. What is your perspective on how do we short circuit that whole process and have you consider some other area of Fresno, given the data that you could look at and say, oh, this area is overburdened. Here are the numbers. Here are the health impacts that we've been hearing about. We can document, we can validate that this is the case. What would help you make different decisions that are more equitable? And how can this committee be a part of moving that forward? Because we keep, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. We know that that's the definition of insanity. And so if we're just going to wait for notices to come to us, that seems really a waste of really good time. So how can this committee be more helpful in providing resources and materials and support in helping to shift the discussion and the dialogue about where these industries are going in the first place?
Dr. Curry, those are really great questions. I'll just speak personally, having been involved in the truck rerouting study and working with the subcommittee and the UC Merced team on scoping the health impact study. I think those are all quite valid efforts, and everyone needs to look at the data and the findings very seriously and working towards making the community a better place. So I think that how the steering committee can be working at that is continuing. I mean, the ongoing dialogue. We have various topics and avenues and issues we're looking at. It's rolling up our sleeves together and working through this.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's not the lack of knowledge about, sort of the impact and what's happening. And so I guess what I'm asking from your perspective is, given that you already have the knowledge base and you already sort of know some of this information already, what is it going to take to help move this discussion so that it isn't a discussion about people rallying and organizing to prevent something from being put in their community? How is it that this information is taken early enough so that the decision, and part of it, I guess, is people being in different positions, but the discussion about why would this go to West Fresno when we already know it's an overburdened community? Why couldn't that be the response versus let's put it where we always put it? So I'm asking specifically, like, what do you think is going to help to shift that discussion and to make that point versus, continuing to do what we've been doing? And is there some pieces of specific information or data, or something that you think is going to be most helpful, given that you'd like to see this change too?
Again, great questions, topics I'll take back to the city of Fresno, the leadership team. I think the South Central specific plan is another great area for dialogue and ultimately those land use and policy decisions. For the most part, I mean, in terms of, there's the hierarchy of what's in the general plan, what's in the various community plans, and the city's development code. And wherever we're talking in the community, for example, if the adopted land use plan, by the council and the community plan, if it shows, okay, single family residential on this property of this density, and someone comes in with something that matches that adopted land use, then that's going to move forward through that process, of course, with community input, but from a staff level, that's going to move forward through that process and come forward, and people would not question why are you bringing something forward that matches the adopted plan. So really, it really comes down to big picture. What is the planned land use? What is the planned zoning?
I'm only going to say 2 words: Elm rezone, and that's,
I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Scott. I know you're mostly an ambassador here, and you'll take that back, and hopefully we can restart this conversation, because the more that we go around it, the more that is needed. And frankly, I know I was digging my heel on it has to say MOU. At this point, I'm not going to talk about myself because this is a committee. I'm not going to speak for the others. I think I will leave the name up for discussion, but most importantly, we need it because we continue to see the Jennifer rubber stamping permits in areas that we have been trying to clean. And the thing is that notification that you're alluding to is not going to be enough, as Ivanka mentioned, because residents are getting notified like way too late. And even when we ask even just for more time to read and be able to help residents, that extra time was not even allowed. And I'm talking about the specific example of the biomass that is being considered right now and that we're appealing, that would add more pollution to one area of the AB 617 corner near southeast. So we're gonna, I feel like, why are we spinning our wheels here, putting all these monies into planting trees and doing the reroute study? For me, I feel like I had said probably this before, I feel like I am sweeping my kitchen floor and my kids are behind my back throwing out crumbles on the floor. That's how I see it. We're making an improvement and we're turning around and we're seeing more permits. And I am not an expert on CEQA by no means, but for me, it makes no sense that we are seeing that that they don't want to do a full environmental impact report, like in this particular case. And how could it be that we are saying it's okay, that it's not going to be a significant impact when we're adding more pollution to a zone that is already overburdened? So, you know, I'm just going to end here, but I just want to please go back and say, we need the city, everybody to be in the same page, because it makes no sense for us. And thank you very much for coming every meeting. And that's very appreciated. But we need everybody in the city to be on the same page, because you can come to the meetings and Jennifer can turn around and do whatever, you know, she sees fit, more permits that are not in alignment with what we are discussing here in AB 617.
Thank you, Naomi.
Can I take advantage? And I know Lisa has her hand. You know that you said that you are not the responsible, so like Jennifer is the head of that department. Are you responsible for the department that deals with trash and the problem that Lilia was mentioning?
The way we're organized, public utilities includes solid waste, which would be, you know, all the residential trash collection. They also have operation cleanup. As public works, so really quickly for us, we are street maintenance, all the landscape maintenance, traffic operations and planning,
okay.
Design of projects, managing construction, and then we do inspection of new development, like things like sewer, water, streets, and then of course transportation planning is a big one. Things like the truck rerouting study, lots of grant applications, and pursuing bike. We're all about bike lanes, sidewalks, walkability, active transportation. So that's kind of in a nutshell our public works team.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you, Scott. And Lisa, we'll get to you in just a second. I just want to ask for our notes. We're trying to, I guess, turn this into an action item. And so I guess asking Scott and the CSC, what action do you want to come out of this? Would you like us to, or could we request someone else from the city to maybe join the next meeting to be able to answer these questions, or what are other ideas?
We were having subcommittee meetings, so why don't we start? And I know we have multiple subcommittees, but I think that if we, instead of inserting 10-15 minutes on a 2-hour meeting agenda, why don't we have an hour or 2-hour meeting just devoted to talk about this? And then of course we're not going to make any decision on a subcommittee. We're going to bring it back to the large group. So that would be my recommendation, that we go back to hosting and convening ASAP a meeting for that subcommittee.
And what subcommittee was that? I'm sorry.
We were calling it the Land Use Subcommittee.
Got it. Okay, thank you. We'll note that. Lisa, go ahead.
It's great that the city posts everything on the city clerk's page, but what the city needs to start doing, they need to start thinking, once again, you know, Jerry's out there saying one Fresno. Okay, how about one friendly Fresno? How about one public participation Fresno? You might want to think about how you redo your electronic system notification. Instead of just having one big long list to annoy and irritate everybody, how about doing some tabs? You know, you have all those plans out, that specific plans out there. How about putting a tab? And if something is up about a project in that area, put it in the tab, make it friendly, you know, because I always think that it's always been said, when you design something on the internet, if you go more than 3 clicks, you've lost the person. And also too, Jennifer, please take this back to Jennifer. Tell her she needs to think more about marketing and positive outreach, because there is a correlation between marketing, public outreach, active listening, and taking the considerations of the community to the number of lawsuits you're going to be having, to the millions of dollars that will possibly be lost by the city. So in actuality, by being proactive and positive with the community, getting out there, actively listening to them, address their issues, change some of the things based on their concerns with the project, you're actually going to be saving the city and staff tremendous amount of time and money, and actually will start to reverse the damage that has been done historically by the Fresno government on this community. Just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll take that back as well, as far as constructive criticism on listserv and how that could function.
Thank you. Lilia, I see your hand.
Sí, tengo una pregunta o sea, sugestión nada más para el señor que está trabajando para la ciudad, para Moiser. Es una sugerencia nada más. Estamos luchando contra la contaminantes de las industrias, estamos luchando contra las chimeneas de las familias que prenden sus chimeneas, estamos luchando contra el contaminante de los autos, altos carros, camiones grandes. ¿Qué hay de que podemos hacer de que, aparte de que las personas o los jovencitos que hacen la quemadera de llantas en las calles se les decomise su carro por 30 días, ¿por qué no quitarles el auto y ese fondo se pueda utilizar para seguir trabajando por un mejor ambiente? Porque estos niños no entienden. Yo pienso que quitándoles el auto sería una de las maneras más efectivas para que no sigan haciendo esto y otros lo piensen antes de volver a hacer quema de llantas en nuestras calles. Pienso, es una sugerencia nada más. Si usted va a llevar eso a la ciudad, preséntelo también. Yo pienso que es una sugestión muy buena, aparte de que evitamos accidentes. ¿Se dan cuenta? Hace aproximadamente un mes en Los Ángeles atropellaron a una niña o una jovencita que estaba parada en una parada de bus por accidente, que se descontroló el carro y quemando llantas fueron a atropellar a esta jovencita. Entonces, podemos evitar pérdidas humanas y podemos también cuidar nuestro medio ambiente por medio de eso, quitándoles el auto, decomisándoselas, y que aprendan estos jóvenes que no nomás es estar quemando nuestro aire, nos está contaminando también todo. Entonces, aparte nos arriesgan nuestras vidas. Si los hacen en la esquina de nuestras casas, arriesgan nuestras propiedades porque se pueden desbalancear y pueden ir a estamparse con nuestras casas. Entonces, es un riesgo muy grande. La dejo de tarea, por favor, señor Moiser. Scott, para que se lo presente a la ciudad de Fresno también. Pienso que es un buen punto para esto también, ya que estamos hablando del medio ambiente.
Thank you, Lilia. Yeah, I heard about that unfortunate incident, and you do bring up another really good point. And so we will include that note as a point of discussion, I think, for relaunching the land use subcommittee, where we can talk more in depth about those issues with the city of Fresno. So thank you. Are there any final comments on this piece before we start to wrap up the meeting? And I'll read a comment in the chat that came. I think some residents are hesitant to engage because they're looking for solutions and a change of action, but we keep focusing on education and data. Folks know the facts and want to change the trajectory of our community, but we keep going in circles. So thank you, Sandra, for that comment. We've also noted that as well. Any final comments? Okay. So we can move on to wrapping up our meeting. I will quickly share my screen.
You can advertise on bulletin boards, like in the delis, like in that there are some in South Central Fresno. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that was another suggestion for outreach, which is noted too. Thank you. So I will share my screen real quick. And here are our meeting dates So we will have our next agenda setting meeting on Wednesday, January 18th at a normal time of 4:30. And then we will have our next CSC on Wednesday, February 8th at 5:30 p.m. And we can also move to showing our action items that we've collected for this evening. So I'll share my screen one last time. Okay. Can you all see that? Okay. So the first action item is there will be ongoing opportunities to influence the implementation of the urban greening and vegetative barriers contract approved by the CSC and awarded to Tree Fresno and CCEJN. Please plan to join the trees subcommittee to provide your further recommendations. Next, the CSC members are encouraged to reach out to other community members to encourage more resident participation and membership. Next, we will create a space for the CSC to brainstorm on the most effective outreach and recruitment and onboarding strategies for new CSC members. Next, the Air District will develop outreach and recruitment materials such as flyers and brochures. Next, the Air District, with the support of CSC members, will develop a process to potentially expand the geographic boundaries or other ways to support the recruitment and retainment of CSC members. And then our last action item here is to relaunch the land use subcommittee meetings and request that city officials join. And we've also had it in our more detailed notes, some specific topics to bring to those meetings. And so are there any questions or comments or clarifications from the CSC about any of these action items? Anything that was missed that you think we should add? Okay. I am not seeing any comments, and I don't think we have any comments on YouTube Live. So we can start wrapping up our meeting now, and I would love to pass it to Ivanka and Jessica for some closing remarks.
Yeah, very good discussion tonight. Thank you, everyone who has stayed on and joined this call. And that's it. I hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you.
I'll echo Ivanka's comments. I think a sign of a good meeting is the number of different people we hear from. And I certainly heard from a lot of folks and certainly a lot of residents. So I just want to thank you all and thanks for staying late with us. Have a great night.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Feel free to stay on for public comment. We'll be here. If not, hope you all have a really good night and stay safe. Thank you.
And per usual, we will be sending out an email with other general updates.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Ramos.
What I wanted to say before is that I feel like everyone's leaving me out. They're never giving me any specific task or research task to do, which I know I can do.
Okay, so maybe more, you're saying
So
more
that was getting
specific
bored because of
guidance.
that.
Okay, so maybe we can do a better job clarifying our asks for the community.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a CBO
where-
representative to here that could connect with Laura.
We can reach
All right,
out
'cause
to you,
I'm missing some of your emails, and sometimes I don't know exactly what like how to be on the agenda setting meeting. Is there a link to the agenda setting meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, we can add, we can reach out to Laura. Let's put that as another action item for us to follow up on about all of the meetings and making sure you're on the right lists, Laura.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And what exactly
other
needs to be researched?
I think maybe we'll follow up just so I can clarify with you what you're asking when you ask about research, Laura, because there's certainly a lot of opportunities and a lot going on. And when we call you, we'll give you a call tomorrow and talk more about that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you, Laura. Any other final comments for tonight?
Just really quick, if I didn't say it, Scott, thank your guys for all they're doing this week and filling those potholes and getting out there and cutting those trees and keeping people going. Greatly appreciate it.
I think Scott may have signed off, so he didn't get to hear that, but
We'll share it with him. That's good to hear that that's happening.
yeah. Awesome.
And I got an idea of something I'm going to research, like I research chicken farms and what kind of emissions they have.
We look forward to connecting with you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night, everyone.